On the 1st of May 2024, a passenger train collided with a car at a level crossing in the town of Redcar, travelling at 27 miles per hour, causing serious injuries to the car driver and significant disruption. Join us as we investigate the incident in full, finding out how an experienced signaller forgot to close the level crossing gates, and the strange events that will make you never to trust an open level crossing again. Redcar level crossing, located in the middle of Redcar, is a fully gated and manually controlled crossing operated by a signaller at Redcar signal box. As shown, the signaller has a clear view over the crossing when activating the gates. However, when seated in his control room, it is not visible. The signaller is also responsible for Church Lane Crossing, situated approximately 600 metres to the east, which is observed by CCTV cameras. These are seen here, pointing at Church Street Crossing, which are connected to the Redcar signal post control room and monitored and controlled by the signaller. Redcar Crossing uses horizontal gates which are controlled by the control pedestal as seen in the previous image. Both Redcar and Church Street crossings are protected in the westbound direction by signal Romeo 223 as seen in this image, located approximately 40 metres before Church Street crossing. It is controlled by this exact switch on the signalling panel in the Redcar control room. Despite having 6 years experience as a signaller, he had received 2 safety related incidents in the 2 years leading up to the incident, and just 3 weeks before, he received an email from a manager demanding an explanation for a delayed train at Redcar station, which had caused severe financial cost. As it turned out, this was not the signaller's fault, but planted a seed in his mind about the importance of not causing delays, and this will play a part later on. At 9:08 am, train number 2 Uniform 85, a class 156 2-car diesel multiple unit, left Saltburn station running the northern service to Nunthorpe. The route would take the train past Church Street and Redcar level crossings on the way to Nunthorpe via Middlesbrough. Shortly before its arrival, train number 2 Delta 11, the 08:59 am Saltburn to Oakland service, passed signal Romeo 223, which reverted it back to show its red danger aspect from green. For those unfamiliar with train signals, this requires a train driver to stop and wait for it to change colour to green or yellow, unless on rare occasions they are instructed to pass a red signal by a signaller. With both Redcar and Church Street crossing barriers now closed, train 2 Delta 11 passed by safely. The signaller at Redcar at this stage understood that another train number 2 Uniform 85, was not far behind, therefore decided to keep Church Street crossing closed. However, due to his better vantage point of Redcar crossing, he could see the major build-up of traffic. Therefore, he decided he had enough time to open Redcar barriers to allow the traffic through. At 09:11 am, train number 2 Uniform 85 had just arrived at Longbeck station, 2 stations before Redcar. The Redcar signaller received what's known as a bell code, which basically asks the signaller if it is safe to allow 2 Uniform 85 to approach the 2 level crossings. The signaller accepted, and 2 minutes later received another bell code telling the signaller that the train 2 Uniform 85 was entering the section between Longbeck and Redcar. At 09:14 am, records also indicated that the signaller received another phone call from another signaller for a member of staff's mobile number. The Redcar signaller, 1 minute later, after a quick search, rang back to give the information. At 09:16 am, the Redcar signaller attempted to change signal Romeo 223 to green to allow train 2 Uniform 85 through. However, he was unable to obtain a green lamp indicator on his switch. In fact, he quickly realised that he was also unable to get a red light. After trying for 1 minute, the signaller believed it was a fault and phoned in to Network Rail for investigation. Unbelievably, the signaller had completely forgotten about his earlier decision of opening red car level crossings barriers, and the system therefore, by design, did not allow signal Romeo 223 to change colour. Whilst on the phone to Network Rail regarding the fault, the signaller became interrupted by a phone call from the train driver of 2 Uniform 85, who by now was waiting on red at Romeo 223. Due to believing it to be a fault, as no colour was on, the signaller first asked the train driver to confirm the red light at the signal, which the train driver admitted later was very strange, but ultimately he was then given permission to pass through the red light as normal. As soon as the train began to move, the signaller immediately picked up the phone to continue speaking to Network Rail right up until collision. At 9:26 am, train 2 Uniform 85 was travelling at just under 30 miles an hour when approaching red car level crossing. All of a sudden, a car which had been travelling down Birdsall Row, as shown, turned onto the crossing from the south side right onto the oncoming train's path. The barriers were open with no flashing lights showing. The car violently collided with the train, causing severe injuries to the driver and completely writing off the car. The signaller, who was still on the phone, had heard the massive impact and immediately discovered the mistake that was made. All trains were stopped in the area, passengers disembarked and emergency services were called. The RAIB arrived in the afternoon to find out the exact cause of the accident. They were very quick to rule out the car driver. If the barriers are up and showing no warning flashing lights, then there is no requirement for the driver to look left and right for oncoming trains. Even if there was, the line of sight is obstructed by the signal box, as shown by this image, just entering the crossing. The investigators then turned to the signaller. It was clear that he had forgotten to close the red car crossing gates and had mistaken the lack of lights on the control switch as a fault instead of the correct action from the interlock system. This was to keep signal Romeo 223 showing a red aspect if any of the gates were still open. However, the signaller was partially correct as the red lamp light had become faulty, therefore no lights were displayed on the switch. The investigation then discovered the phone call from Grange Station, asking for a worker's number. The phone call was from a fixed telephone, which required the signaller to move away from the window and sit back in front of the CCTV cameras, showing a closed Church Street crossing. This small change distracted the signaller, along with the closed barriers at Church Street, reinforced his belief that all crossing barriers had closed. The RAIB theorised that the recent investigation about delayed trains from management, combined with a perfect storm of multiple tasks at once, reduced the signaller's concentration, whilst also making him rush through decisions instead of taking his time. The RAIB also examined the role of the train driver in the incident. The module S5 of the rulebook states that when being allowed to pass a red signal by a signaller, you must always travel at caution, even if the line appears to be clear. This means to drive slow. The driver on question did explain that the signaller did inform him to travel slow and to check that Church Street crossing was clear, but did not instruct him about red car crossing. Just before the first crossing, the driver could see the crossing barriers down and pass slowly. After, the train driver assumed that the second crossing would be closed due to his proximity to the signal box and having been given no instruction by the signaller about the red car crossing. The driver therefore accelerated. Unfortunately, Due to the design of red car crossing, it would have been impossible to know on approach if the crossing barriers were activated or not by the train driver. Trust would ultimately be placed onto the signaller. On conclusion of the report, the RAIB recommended a full ergonomic assessment of the red car signalling box, which had never been conducted before, along with a full review of situations faced by signallers that could affect the safety of trains. This incident was created by a long timeline of small mistakes that luckily did not lead to the loss of a life. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe for more. Thank you.